Mr. Petersen, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and coming here to VOA. Well, we had a very, I want to say, active period politically, specifically on the U.S. involvement in the South Caucasus. We just had Secretary Clinton being in the three countries of the South Caucasus, Baku, Yerevan, Tbilisi, a case which we haven't seen for a long time. The previous Secretary of the State who made it there was in 1992, right. So about 18 years ago. What's the reason for these activated visits of the U.S. foreign officials in the region?
Well, it's been called the reassurance tour. And I think actually, that's kind of a catchy name, but I think actually that's pretty accurate. The impetus for this visit by Secretary Clinton, particularly to the three South Caucasus countries, but also the visit of Secretary Gates to Baku some time ago, is very much based not so much, unfortunately, on proactive U.S. policy engaging the region, because the region is considered key for U.S. strategy and key for U.S. interests. More so it's because there's been the perception that with the so-called Russia reset, or the closer bilateral relationship between Moscow and Washington, that the countries around Russia and the former Soviet states have been abandoned a little bit by the United States. And so in many ways it's accurate to say that this is a reassurance tour. And so I would say the number one motivation for this is actually to mention to these countries and their leadership that we have not forgotten about you. And number two is to say that in some ways, particularly with Tbilisi and Baku, not so much with Yerevan, because actually the relationship has been rather better compared to the other two Caucasus countries lately with Washington. But particularly to Baku and Tbilisi, it's been about kind of apologizing for, on the side of Tbilisi, having really, in some ways, ignored the country since the war in 2008. And then with Azerbaijan, it's about not the perception that it wasn't engaged as much in the Turkey-Armenia rapprochement process.
Mm-hmm. Many analysts speculate that the visit of the Secretary Clinton is another try by the Obama administration to get some kind of foreign policy success. We have the Middle East that is basically not really going anywhere so far. We have Afghanistan and Iraq that are in harsh situations by themselves. So do you think it's possible that some kind of quick solutions in sense of conflicts in the region can show up with the visit? Did Secretary Clinton bring a message there that would seriously assure a more solution-based diplomatic process?
I think it could potentially be the beginning of that, but it's not, unfortunately, one or two visits from cabinet-level officials from the United States is not going to bring a solution, certainly. But it is a key piece of it, because it's more than other parts of the world, in the Caucasus and in broader Eurasia, as I would call it, visits by high-level officials and one-on-one high-level meetings are extremely important, both symbolically and for the perception of the publics when looking at, what the involvement and the engagement of the United States is. So that's key. It's a key piece of it. But before we can talk about real solutions, for example, to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, real solutions to the situation in Georgia, which certainly Tbilisi would argue cannot continue as the status quo. And other issues as well, bilateral issues between the United States and the three countries. We cannot begin to talk about serious solutions to these problems until the visits are backed up by policy proposals and more specific recommendations from the U.S. leadership to the leadership in the region. So I would say that I would hope that there is now going to be a follow-up, and this can be viewed as a first step. But to be honest, I'm not all that optimistic. But there is certainly a lot of room at the moment for individuals involved with regional policymaking to influence the United States in what its next steps and what its policy is going to be towards the region. Mm-hmm. So now is a period of transition, and it's a period of opportunity too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, right before Secretary Clinton went to the region, there was the famous statement by the three presidents, right. Nicolas Sarkozy, Medvedev, and Obama, right. In Canada during the meeting. And the statement had some differences in the translation in the Russian version
Yes,
and in
that's
the
right.
English version.
Yeah.
What is this all about?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, this has been interpreted by a lot of people as being maybe some kind of rift amongst the co-chairs or something like that. That's really not what it is. It's what it is more is the fact that it highlights the disagreements that really are between the two belligerent parties, between Azerbaijan and Armenia, to be honest. Because
What are those disagreements?
well, that's unfortunately the thing is that obviously there was a disagreement over the conflict for a long time. Now that's the main disagreement that we even have the process for.
Right.
But aside from that, what's unfortunate that it's developing is that there's a disagreement now as to the principles of how to come to a conflict resolution. Because, as you know, there was a basic principles document that was actually agreed upon by all the parties, and it was even agreed upon in outline, at least, at the very beginning when there was representation from the Nagorno-Karabakh entity, actually, right? So there was general across-the-board agreement, the three co-chairs, the two belligerent parties, and the Nagorno-Karabakh entity, all of them, even though now the last is not part of the negotiations any longer. So that was actually presented a lot of opportunity to move forward based on those principles. The disagreement now is that there's two new versions, basically, of those principles.
The renewed Madrid, the so-called renewed
Exactly.
Madrid.
And so the Armenians are pushing for one of the new versions, and the Azerbaijanis are pushing for another of the new versions. And unfortunately, this means that now either we're going to have to come up with a fourth version, where everyone can agree on, or we're going to have to go back to the first version. Because the two that either side is pushing for, no one is going to come to agreement on those.
Do you believe that the involvement of Nagorno-Karabakh, today's authorities, into the diplomatic process would contribute to a quicker settlement?
I think, no, it would not contribute to a quicker settlement. Now, it depends what sort of settlement you want to see at the end, right? So I would say that probably the best solution is not to, I mean, they never were in a completely official capacity in Operation Payson anyway. But I would say what needs to be done is to reach out to the people on the ground. I mean, you have to reach, it's almost silly to be speaking over the heads of the population in the area that you're focusing on. But I think that the reaction from both Azerbaijan and also Turkey as a member of the Minsk group, not a co-chair but a member, would be harsh and would actually make the solution, the track towards a solution slower. So I wouldn't say they should be involved officially, but reaching out unofficially and in terms of track 2 engagement is extremely important. And one of the key problems I want to highlight about the Nagorno-Karabakh negotiations is that unlike other conflict negotiations around the world, and unlike in Georgia as well, there has been very little track 2 initiatives. And that is initiatives between civil society, between individuals, between academics, between youth groups, and that sort of thing. That needs to happen a lot more, and that should certainly include population in the Nagorno-Karabakh area.
Well, in other words, confidence building before we want to reach any solution, and that happens better on the track 2 maybe. Track 2 can
but
contribute
not just
in many other
confidence
ways.
building, also coming up with independent solutions as part of a track 2. New ideas.
We saw the Armenian-Turkish process that basically is considered failed so far by many, as it was frozen back in April 22 this year. Well, what we saw is 2 protocols where supposedly a lot of content was put on, and one thing that was excluded was the Nagorno-Karabakh issue. What we saw from the Turkish side was, after signing the protocols, immediately getting back to the Karabakh issue, bringing it up, and trying to involve it into the Armenian-Turkish context. Right. Can we say that the reason why the protocols failed was because Karabakh was or was not involved?
I think it would be simplistic to say that it failed because of the Nagorno-Karabakh issue. But there were other issues. But I would say that going forward, the most important issue is the context of 3 parties within this. Not just Armenia-Turkey, but Armenia-Turkey-Azerbaijan. And I'm not saying that means